What if the gods you think you know are just the beginning? Picture this: a storm rages over the Aegean Sea, waves crashing like the fists of an angry deity. In the heart of the tempest, a lone ship battles the fury of Poseidon, its crew praying to a pantheon of gods whose names have echoed through millennia. This isn't just a scene from myth. It's a glimpse into the vast tapestry of divine legends that have shaped civilizations, fueled wars, and inspired art for thousands of years. From the thunderous halls of Olympus to the shadowy underworlds of ancient Mesopotamia, every culture has whispered its own epic tales of gods and goddesses, beings of unimaginable power, passion, and paradox. But how much do we really know about these divine pantheons, and what secrets lie buried in their stories, waiting to be uncovered? Divine pantheons aren't just collections of myths, they're mirrors reflecting the hopes, fears, and dreams of the people who worship them. Think about it: the Greek gods, with their all-too-human flaws, reveal a culture that saw divinity as both majestic and deeply relatable. The Norse pantheon, steeped in fate and fire, speaks to a world where even gods face an inevitable end. And the Hindu deities, with their intricate cycles of creation and destruction, embody a universe in constant flux. These stories weren't just entertainment. They were the bedrock of entire societies, guiding laws, rituals, and even the way people understood their place in the cosmos. But here's the thing: for every famous legend you've heard, there are dozens more, equally breathtaking, that have slipped through the cracks of history. That's where this journey begins. Over the next 30 legends, we'll venture beyond the familiar, diving into the forgotten corners of divine lore. Imagine uncovering the Egyptian goddess who wielded the power of the sun and the serpent, or the Aztec deity whose sacrifice birthed the moon. Picture the Polynesian trickster who shaped the islands with his laughter, or the Celtic warrior queen who defied gods and mortals alike. These aren't just stories, they're keys to understanding the cultures that birthed them and the timeless human questions they sought to answer. So, if you're ready to step into a world where gods walk among mortals, where love and vengeance shape destinies, and where every legend holds a truth waiting to be discovered, then let's begin. The pantheons are calling, and their stories are far from over. Long before Zeus ruled the skies from Mount Olympus, the world was a battleground of primordial forces. The Titans, led by the ruthless Cronus, held dominion over creation, but their reign was built on fear and tyranny. When Zeus, the youngest son of Cronus, escaped his father's cruel fate, being swallowed at birth like his siblings, he ignited a rebellion that would shake the cosmos to its core. This wasn't just a family feud, it was the Titanomachy, a cataclysmic war between gods and titans that lasted 10 brutal years, reshaping the very fabric of Greek mythology. Zeus's cunning was as legendary as his thunderbolts. Freed from his father's grip, he rallied his brothers and sisters Poseidon, Hades, Hera, and others who Cronus had imprisoned in his belly. But the Olympians didn't fight alone. Deep within the earth, Zeus unearthed forgotten allies, the Cyclops, master forgers who crafted his iconic lightning bolts, and the Hecatoncheires, hundred-handed giants whose sheer strength could tear mountains apart. With these ancient powers at his side, Zeus waged a war so violent it split the earth and scorched the heavens. The Titans fought back with fury. Oceanus unleashed floods. Hyperion hurled the sun like a weapon. But the Olympians' unity proved unstoppable. Victory came at a price. The defeated Titans were cast into Tartarus, a prison deeper than the underworld itself, guarded by the Hecatoncheires for eternity. Yet Zeus's triumph wasn't just about conquest, it marked a new order. Where the Titans represented chaos and brute force, the Olympians brought balance, justice tempered by wisdom, power checked by law. Even the Cyclops, once feared as monsters, became symbols of divine craftsmanship, their forges lighting the way for a new era. This war wasn't just a clash of gods, it was the birth of a worldview where destiny could be challenged, where even the mightiest could fall. And for the ancient Greeks, that lesson echoed far beyond the myths, into their politics, their art, and their very understanding of what it meant to be human. While Zeus reshaped the cosmos through war, the Norse god Odin sought power through an act of unimaginable self-sacrifice. Picture the mighty world tree, Yggdrasil, its roots stretching across the 9 realms, branches scraping the heavens. At its base stands Odin, the All-Father, not as a conqueror but as a seeker, willing to endure agony for the ultimate prize, wisdom. This isn't just a myth, it's a haunting meditation on what it means to truly know. Driven by an insatiable thirst for understanding, Odin pierced his own side with a spear and hung himself from Yggdrasil's gnarled limbs, a voluntary offering to the void. For 9 days and nights he dangled between life and death, his body battered by wind, his mind unraveling the mysteries of the universe. No armies rallied to his aid, no thunderbolt split the sky, just silence, suffering, and the slow drip of his blood onto the roots below. Then, in the darkness, the runes spoke. These ancient symbols carved into the fabric of reality granted him knowledge of magic, poetry, and fate itself. But why such a brutal price? The answer lies in Norse belief. True wisdom isn't given, it's earned. Yggdrasil wasn't just a tree, it was the axis of existence connecting gods, giants, and mortals. By hanging there, Odin bridged the seen and unseen worlds, his sacrifice mirroring the Norse respect for endurance and transformation. Even his spear, Gungnir, later became a symbol of unbreakable oaths forged in the same trial that birthed his enlightenment. This act defined Odin forever. Unlike Zeus, who ruled through strength, the All-Father governed through foresight. His missing eye, traded for a drink from the well of wisdom, became a reminder: vision isn't just about sight, it's about perception. The runes he gained weren't mere tools, they were threads in the tapestry of destiny, woven into spells, battles, and even the names of kings. And perhaps most strikingly, his story echoes a truth that resonated with Viking warlords and skalds alike. Power without wisdom is hollow, but knowledge bought with blood endures. As the Greek and Norse gods reshaped their worlds through war and sacrifice, the Egyptian sun god Ra faced a battle of his own, one that repeated every single night, hidden beneath the sands of the mortal world. While mortals slept, Ra embarked on the most perilous journey imaginable, a voyage through the Duat, the serpent-infested underworld, where the fate of the entire cosmos hung in the balance. This wasn't just a myth, it was the ancient Egyptians' explanation for why the sun rose each morning, and a stunning metaphor for the eternal struggle between order and chaos. Ra's golden solar bark, crewed by lesser gods and the souls of the righteous dead, sailed through 12 treacherous gates, each representing an hour of the night. But lurking in the depths was Apep, the embodiment of pure chaos, a serpent so vast his coils could crush creation itself. Every night, Apep sought to devour Ra, plunging the world into endless darkness. The battle wasn't just physical, it was a cosmic tug-of-war where spells from the Book of the Dead were as vital as swords. Thoth, the god of wisdom, chanted incantations to weaken Apep, while Set, often a troublemaker, became an unlikely ally, spearing the serpent with his mighty spear. Even Hathor, the gentle cow goddess of love, transformed into the lioness Sekhmet, her fury a shield against the darkness. The stakes couldn't have been higher. If Ra failed, the sun would never rise again, crops would wither, rivers would dry, and Maat, the divine order of the universe, would collapse into chaos. Yet dawn always came, proof of Ra's victory. But here's what makes this myth so profound: Apep was never truly destroyed. Each night, the battle renewed, teaching the Egyptians that order wasn't a permanent state, it had to be fought for day after day, just as farmers fought the Nile's floods or pharaohs defended their kingdoms. Ra's journey was more than a celestial cycle, it mirrored the Egyptian view of life and death. The Duat wasn't just a hellish pit, it was a place of transformation where souls were judged and the sun itself was reborn. And perhaps that's why this myth endured. It wasn't just about gods and monsters, It was a reminder that light doesn't exist without darkness, and that even the mightiest forces in the universe must face their shadow to begin anew. Far from the battles of Olympus or the trials of Odin in the sacred islands of Japan, the sun itself once vanished not in a clash of titans but in a moment of divine heartbreak. This is the story of Amaterasu, the radiant sun goddess of Shinto belief, whose light didn't just illuminate the world, it sustained the very harmony of existence. Yet when her brother, the storm god Susanoo, unleashed his cruelty, desecrating her rice fields, flinging a flayed horse into her sacred loom, Amaterasu didn't respond with fury. She retreated, wounded and weary. She sealed herself inside the heavenly rock cave, plunging the earth into an endless night. Crops failed, rivers froze, and demons reveled in the shadows. The gods knew without her, life itself would unravel. But how do you coax a goddess who refuses to be seen? The other deities didn't wield weapons or bargains, they wielded curiosity. Outside the cave, they erected a towering mirror of polished bronze and draped a sacred tree with jewels and shimmering cloth. Then Yuzum, the goddess of dawn and laughter, began to dance. Not a solemn ritual, but a wild, joyous performance, stomping her feet, spinning until her robes flew loose, her laughter ringing through the gloom. The commotion grew so raucous the gods themselves erupted in cheers, shaking the very heavens. And here's the stroke of genius. They let Amaterasu overhear their delight. From inside the cave, the sun goddess strained to understand why such celebration in her absence. Peering through a crack in the rocks, she saw the mirror and mistook her own dazzling reflection for a radiant new deity. Who is this that outshines even me? She whispered, stepping closer. In that instant, Yuzum seized the mirror, reflecting Amaterasu's light back into the world. The gods barricaded the cave behind her, and dawn broke once more. This myth isn't just about the sun's return. It's a masterclass in Japanese values. The mirror, now enshrined at Ai's grand shrine, symbolizes truth's power to dispel despair. Yuzum's dance reveals how joy can heal even divine sorrow. And Amaterasu's lesson endures. Sometimes light hides not because it's gone, but because it's waiting to be reminded of its own brilliance. In the beginning, before time had meaning, there was only swirling chaos, a formless void where darkness and light tangled like serpents. From this primordial mist rose a single cosmic egg, perfect and unbroken, cradling within it the slumbering giant Pangu. For 18,000 years he slept, growing as the universe itself took shape around him, until the day his eyes flared open and he stretched his colossal limbs. With a roar that shattered eternity, Pangu swung his mighty axe, splitting the egg in two. And in that single stroke, he divided the heavens from the earth, not as separate realms, but as opposing forces. The luminous yang rose like smoke to form the sky, while the heavy yin sank like sediment to become the land. But creation demanded more than separation. It demanded sacrifice. Pangu planted his feet on the earth and pressed his palms against the sky, holding them apart as they grew farther each day. For another 18,000 years he endured this colossal strain, his body lengthening with every inch the heavens ascended, his bones groaning under the weight of existence itself. And when at last the universe stabilized, when the sky was irretrievably distant and the earth solid beneath him, Pangu collapsed. His breath became the roaring winds and rolling clouds, his voice the thunder that shook the mountains. His left eye burned into the sun, his right cooled into the moon, and his veins sprawled across the land as rivers. The fleas on his skin, they leaped into the first humans, imparting them with a spark of the divine. This myth is more than a creation story, it's a blueprint of balance. Unlike gods who shaped the world from afar, Pangu became the world, his body a testament to the interconnectedness of all things. The yin and yang he separated weren't just elements, they were living principles teaching that harmony arises from tension. Even in death, Pangu's presence endured. The 5 sacred mountains of China were said to be his fingers, and the seasons shifted with the size of his lingering spirit. What makes Pangu's tale extraordinary is its humility. There's no grand throne or pantheon here, just a solitary giant who labored until his very essence was spent. For the ancient Chinese, this wasn't just how the world began. It was a reminder that creation is ongoing, that every sunrise and rainfall echoes Pangu's sacrifice. His story whispers that we, too, are part of his body, the inheritors of a universe forged not by command, but by boundless, enduring toil. The world had known 4 suns before the 5th dawned, each a failed creation, each ending in catastrophe. The gods, weary of their experiments, gathered beneath the shattered remnants of the last age, determined to try once more. But this time they needed beings to honor them, to sustain them with prayer and sacrifice. The task fell to Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent, god of wisdom and wind. His mission, to descend into Mictlan, the deepest layer of the Aztec underworld, and retrieve the precious bones of past civilizations, the raw materials for a new humanity. Mictlan wasn't just a land of the dead, it was a gauntlet of terrors, rivers of blood, cliffs of obsidian, and the whispering shadows of souls who'd failed their own journeys awaited. Quetzalcoatl, in his guise as Ehecatl the wind god, slipped through like a breeze, navigating the labyrinth with quiet precision. But Mictlantecutli, the skeletal lord of the underworld, was no fool. Sensing the intrusion, he demanded a price. Quetzalcoatl must sound a conch shell horn, one with no holes. A trick, of course, but the feathered serpent outsmarted him. He summoned worms to bore holes into the shell and filled them with bees whose buzzing mimicked the horn's call. Infuriated, Mictlantecutli relented, but as Quetzalcoatl fled with the bones, the Lord of the Dead sent quail to attack. The bones shattered, scattering across the earth. Undeterred, Quetzalcoatl gathered the fragments, carrying them to Tamonchan, the paradise of the gods. There he ground the bones into powder and mixed them with his own blood, drawn from his pierced flesh. The act was more than alchemy, it was a covenant. Unlike the gods of other pantheons, who molded humans from clay or dust, Quetzalcoatl bound humanity to the divine through shared essence. But creation required more than bones and blood, it demanded sustenance. Enter maize, the golden treasure hidden inside Tonacatepetl, the mountain of sustenance. Tezcatlipoca, the trickster god of night and Quetzalcoatl's eternal rival, had sealed the mountain tight. Yet where brute force failed, wit prevailed. Quetzalcoatl transformed into an ant, leading a line of insects into the mountain's heart to steal a single kernel. With the help of the rain god Tlaloc, he planted it, and from that kernel sprouted the first cornfields, the lifeblood of Aztec civilization. This myth isn't just about origins, it's a tapestry of conflict and ingenuity. Quetzalcoatl and Tezcatlipoca's rivalry mirrors the Aztec worldview, balanced through tension like the push and pull of day and night, the shattered bones. A metaphor for humanity's flaws, broken yet resilient. And maize, more than a crop, it was sacred sustenance, a gift that tied survival to divine grace. For the Aztecs, every ear of corn, every drop of blood whispered Quetzalcoatl's name, a reminder that creation is never easy and that even gods must bleed to bring life into being. Beneath the mist-shrouded hills of ancient Ireland, where battle cries mingled with the whispers of spirits, strode a figure draped in shadows and raven feathers, the Morrigan. More than a goddess of war, she was fate's harbinger, a weaver of prophecies that coiled like smoke around the heroes of the Ulster cycle. To meet her was to stand at the crossroads of destiny, for her words were never mere warnings, they were inevitabilities wrapped in riddles. Take Cuchulainn, the Hound of Ulster. At the peak of his fame, the Morrigan appeared to him not as a deity, but as a mysterious woman offering love and alliance. When he spurned her, she vowed revenge, not with a lightning strike, but with a curse woven into the fabric of his legend. Later, as he rode to battle, she manifested as a crimson-haired hag washing armor in a ford, the water running red with blood. "These are the garments of a doomed man," she intoned. Ku Chulainn, blinded by pride, laughed only to realize too late she'd been scrubbing his armor. Every apparition was a thread in the tapestry of his downfall, proving her power lay not in swords but in the unshakable truth of her visions. Yet the Morrigan was never just one thing. She often appeared as a triad: the crow, the washer at the ford, and the seductress, each face reflecting a different aspect of her dominion. As Body Be, the battle crow, she shrieked over armies, her wings stirring the frenzy of combat. As Macha, she cursed men with the pain of childbirth for their arrogance. As Nemain, her very presence could send warriors into a madness where they slaughtered their own kin. This triple nature wasn't just symbolism, it mirrored the Celtic understanding of fate as fluid, multifaceted, and inescapable. What sets the Morrigan apart is her intimacy with mortality. While other war gods glorified victory, she lingered in the aftermath, perched on the shoulders of the fallen, whispering secrets only the dying could hear. Her prophecies weren't passive, they shaped outcomes, as if speaking them aloud set them in motion. For the Celts, she embodied the brutal poetry of war, its inevitability, its sorrow, and the eerie clarity it brought to those facing their end. Even now, her legacy lingers not in statues or temples, but in the chill that runs down your spine when a crow calls twice, and you wonder if it's just a bird or something far older, far wiser watching. Among the gods of the Hindu pantheon, Vishnu stands apart, not as a distant ruler, but as a divine guardian who descends into the chaos of mortal realms whenever darkness threatens to consume the world. His legend isn't told in a single act, but across 10 cosmic incarnations, each tailored to an era's unique crisis. Imagine a deity who becomes a fish to save sacred knowledge from a flood, a boar to lift the earth from the depths of the ocean, and a half-lion beast to tear apart a tyrant who believed himself invincible. This is the essence of Vishnu's avatars, divinity adapting itself to the shape of the world's need. The first of these incarnations, Matsya, emerges during a time when the earth was drowning. A pious king named Manu rescues a tiny fish, only to discover it's Vishnu himself, growing exponentially until it fills the cosmos. The fish guides Manu's ark, loaded with sages, seeds, and sacred texts, through the deluge, preserving the essence of civilization. Centuries later, as the earth sinks into the cosmic ocean, Vishnu returns as Varaha, a boar with tusks like crescent moons. He plunges into the abyss, lifting the planet on his snout as effortlessly as a mother cradling a child. Then there's Narasimha, the half-man, half-lion who emerges from a pillar to eviscerate the demon Hiranyakashipu, a being who'd bargained for immunity from man or beast, day or night, inside or outside. Vishnu's solution, a creature neither man nor beast, at twilight neither day nor night, on the threshold of a palace courtyard, neither inside nor out. The message is clear: when order frays, divinity finds a way. Yet two avatars eclipse the others in their cultural resonance, Rama and Krishna. Rama, the seventh avatar, is the ideal king, flawless in duty, yet heartbreakingly human in his struggles. His epic, the Ramayana, isn't just about rescuing his wife Sita from the demon king Ravana. It's a meditation on righteousness, sacrifice, and the cost of honor. When Rama exiles Sita due to his subjects' doubts, it's not cruelty, it's the tragedy of a ruler bound by his people's expectations. Krishna, the eighth avatar, is his opposite, a mischievous cowherd who steals butter as a child, plays the flute to enchant village girls, and as a warrior delivers the Bhagavad Gita's timeless wisdom on a battlefield. His teachings reveal divinity not just in temples but in laughter, love, and even war. The final avatar, Kalki, is yet to come, a warrior on a white horse destined to appear when greed and corruption choke the world. His coming isn't feared but awaited, a promise that no matter how deep the darkness, the cosmos never abandons its children. What makes Vishnu's avatars extraordinary isn't just their variety, it's how they reflect Hinduism's core belief: the divine isn't static. It evolves alongside humanity, meeting despair with reinvention, tyranny with cunning, and sorrow with grace. Whether as a fish, a king, or a playful herder, Vishnu's message endures. In every age, salvation wears the face the world most needs to see. In the heart of West African folklore, where wisdom and wit are prized above brute strength, no figure looms larger or more mischievous than Anansi the spider. Small in size but boundless in cunning, this trickster weaves his way through countless tales, proving that brains often outmatch brawn. Picture this: high above the earth, in the court of Niame, the sky god, sits a treasure beyond measure, a golden box containing all the world's stories. For centuries, Niame guarded them closely, believing no mortal or creature could ever earn them. But Anansi had other plans. With a spinner's patience, he devised an audacious scheme. Niame demanded 4 impossible creatures: Osibo the leopard, Mmabro the hornet, Anini the python, and Mmoshu the fairy, as payment for the stories. To anyone else, this would be suicide. But Anansi, he saw opportunity. For Osibo, he dug a pit disguised with leaves, luring the leopard with promises of a secret feast. When Osibo tumbled in, Anansi lowered a rope pretending to help, only to tie him up mid-rescue. For Mmabro, he filled a gourd with water, taunting the hornets until they stormed inside, claiming it was raining. Anini the python was tricked into stretching himself straight to settle a fake argument about his length, allowing Anansi to bind him with vine. And tiny Mmoshu, he crafted a wooden doll smeared with sticky sap, placing a bowl of yams in its lap. When the fairy slapped the doll for not sharing, her hand stuck fast along with the other when she tried to free herself. One by one, Anansi delivered the captives to Niame, who had no choice but to surrender the stories. But here's the twist: Anansi didn't hoard them. He released them to the world, ensuring everyone, from elders to children, could share in their power. This act reveals the dual nature of trickster tales. Anansi's deceptions aren't just for personal gain. They're a rebellion against greed, a reminder that knowledge belongs to the people. His exploits don't end there. In Caribbean retellings, Anansi often finds himself pitted against creatures far larger, and learns that size means nothing against a sharp mind. Take the tale of Tiger's fire. When the jungle's animals shivered in the cold, Tiger jealously guarded the only flame. Anansi spun a web above the fire, letting droplets of water fall until Tiger, annoyed by the rain, abandoned it. All the time he convinced Snake to measure himself against a stick, then tied him to it, claiming Snake owed him a debt for straightening him. Each story follows a rhythm. Arrogance meets ingenuity, and the underdog triumphs. What makes Anansi endure isn't just his cleverness, it's what he represents. To the Ashanti people, he's more than a spider. He's a cultural hero who taught them to navigate oppression with wit. Enslaved Africans carried his tales across the Atlantic, transforming him into a symbol of resilience. Even today, when parents say, "Let me tell you an Anansi story," they're passing down more than folklore. They're offering a survival manual wrapped in silk and laughter, proving that sometimes the smallest thread can unravel the mightiest knot. Poetry wasn't just art to the Vikings, it was magic, a force potent enough to sway kings and immortalize legends. But this gift didn't come freely. It was stolen, drop by precious drop, in one of Odin's most daring heists, a tale where the Allfather traded his dignity for divine inspiration, proving that even gods must sometimes crawl before they soar. The story begins with a truce gone wrong. After the Aesir gods and the Vanir gods ended their war, they spat into a vat to seal their peace. But from that mingled spittle rose something extraordinary: Kvasir, a being of such wisdom that no question could stump him. When dwarves murdered Kvasir, they brewed his blood into the mead of poetry, a liquid that turned anyone who drank it into a skald, a master of words. But the mead didn't stay in dwarven hands for long. The giant Sutunga seized it, hiding it deep inside a mountain guarded by his daughter Gunlurd. This wasn't just hoarding, it was a cosmic injustice. Poetry, the lifeblood of Norse culture, was locked away, leaving mortals and gods alike starved for its power. Enter Odin, not as a king but as a laborer. Disguised as a farmhand named Berlverk, he offered to work for Suttungr's brother, Borgi, in exchange for a sip of the mead. After a season of backbreaking toil, Borgi led him to the mountain, but the entrance was sealed. Undeterred, Odin pulled out a drill, not magic, not thunder, just a simple tool, turning it with his own hands until the rock gave way. Then, in a move that defied divine pride, he slithered through the hole as a serpent, his godhood stripped away in the damp dark. For 3 nights he played a different role: lover, gunlord, charmed by this strange visitor, let him drink from the mead, 1 sip per night. But Odin, ever the opportunist, drained each vat completely, swallowing not just poetry but the very essence of creation. When Suttungr discovered the theft, Odin transformed into an eagle, fleeing with the mead burning in his belly. The giant gave chase, his own wings tearing through the sky, but as Odin neared Asgard, he spat the mead into waiting vessels. A few drops fell to Midgard, landing in mud and stone, explaining why some poets are blessed with genius while others stumble. This myth isn't just about theft, it's a manifesto on the cost of inspiration. Odin didn't win the mead through strength or spells, he earned it through humiliation, labor, and guile. The mead's journey from spit to blood to stolen treasure mirrors the Norse belief that art isn't pure, it's born of conflict, even violence. And those drops that fell to earth, they're a reminder that true creativity isn't reserved for gods. It's scattered, imperfect, and waiting for anyone willing to dig through the mud to find it. Jealousy festered in the heart of Set like a scorpion sting. His brother Osiris ruled Egypt with a golden crook and flail, beloved by gods and mortals alike, while Set, lord of storms and chaos, languished in his shadow. But betrayal, when it came, wasn't a simple dagger in the dark. Set crafted a chest to Osiris's exact measurements, adorned with ivory and ebony, then declared during a feast that whoever fit inside would claim it as a gift. When Osiris, ever trusting, lay down within, Set slammed the lid shut, sealing it with molten lead before hurling it into the Nile. The waters swallowed Osiris whole, carrying him far from the land he'd ruled, but this was only the beginning of his ordeal. Grief could have broken a lesser goddess, but Isis refused surrender. With her sister Nephthys, she scoured the riverbanks, her piercing cries summoning reed cutters and fishermen to aid her search. When at last she recovered the chest near Byblos, hidden within a tamarisk tree that had grown around it, Set struck again. He tore Osiris's body into 14 pieces, scattering them across Egypt's nomes like seeds of despair. Undeterred, Isis transformed into a kite, her wings catching the desert winds as she gathered every fragment, all but one devoured by Nile's greedy fish. With golden thread and spells older than the pyramids, she stitched Osiris back together, weaving his flesh with linen and anointing him with sacred oils. The result wasn't mere revival, it was transformation. Osiris rose not as a king of the living, but as lord of Juat, the underworld, his resurrection cementing his role as judge of the dead. Yet the story didn't end in the afterlife. In a hidden marsh, Isis nurtured their son Horus, teaching him the arts of war and magic until he was ready to challenge Set. Their feud escalated into 80 years of battles, Horus losing an eye, Set castrated until the gods intervened, decreeing Horus the rightful heir. But this wasn't just a dynastic squabble. Horus's victory symbolized Maat divine order triumphing over Isfet, the chaos Set embodied. Every pharaoh thereafter became the living Horus, while Osiris's fate offered Egyptians hope. Death wasn't an end, but a passage to rebirth if one's heart proved lighter than Maat's feather. What makes this myth timeless isn't its bloodshed, but its layers. Isis's devotion redefined maternal power in antiquity. Her name meant throne, and every king drew legitimacy from her. Osiris's fragments tied him to the land itself. His body parts were said to sanctify each nome where they fell. and Horus, his struggle mirrored every Egyptian's battle against life's chaos. This wasn't just a tale of gods, it was a map of the soul's journey, stitched together by love, vengeance, and the unbreakable promise that even in darkness the dawn would return. Beneath the endless red sands of Australia, where the earth hums with ancient songlines, slumbers a force older than time itself, the Rainbow Serpent. This isn't just a myth, it's the living heartbeat of Aboriginal Dreamtime, a deity whose coils carved rivers and whose wrath could drown the world. To the Yolngu people, it's Ngaliot; to the Kunwinjku, it's Yingana, names that echo across hundreds of indigenous nations, each with their own stories, yet all bound by one truth: the land itself was shaped by serpent's breath. Picture the dawn of creation when the earth lay flat and silent. The Rainbow Serpent stirred from beneath the dust, her massive body unfurling like a storm across the barren plains. Where she slithered, mountains rose in her wake, valleys split open to become rivers, and waterholes bubbled up from her tears. But this wasn't gentle gardening, it was primal alchemy. In Arnhem Land, elders tell how she spat quartz crystals into the soil, embedding sacred sites with her power. In the Kimberley, her tail scraped the bedrock so deeply it exposed ochre, the blood of the earth itself. Every ridge, every water source, every tree twisted by desert winds carries her signature, yet creation and destruction are twin spirits in her tail. When disrespectful tribes ignored her laws, the Rainbow Serpent didn't just punish, she reshaped. In one story, 2 boys hunted forbidden prey near her waterhole, staining the sacred ground with blood. Enraged, she summoned a flood so vast it drowned the land, leaving only the highest rocks as islands. The boys, transformed into black swans, could never return to human form, a warning etched into the landscape itself. This duality defines her. She gifts water, the source of life, but withholds it from those who break taboos. Even her rainbows aren't just beauty, they're a bridge between realms, a reminder that the physical and spiritual worlds are never truly separate. What makes the Rainbow Serpent endure isn't just her might, it's her intimacy. Unlike distant sky gods, she's woven into the land's every contour. Aboriginal elders still sing her into being during ceremonies, tracing her paths in dance so the earth remembers its creator. Rock art depicting her sinuous form dates back thousands of years, some paintings so sacred they're retouched in secret to keep her stories alive. And when the monsoon rains come, filling dry riverbeds in minutes, you can almost hear her scales shifting beneath the mud. She's not a relic, she's the pulse of a continent, proof that some legends don't fade. They slumber, waiting for the next generation to listen. Loki's bloodline was a ticking clock woven into the fabric of Norse fate. Unlike other gods who fathered heroes or kings, his offspring were harbingers of doom, each more monstrous than the last, each destined to play a part in the twilight of the gods. The first, Fenrir, wasn't born a monster but a wolf pup, innocent in size but not in potential. The gods saw the future in his yellow eyes, prophecies of him swallowing Odin whole during Ragnarok. Their solution, chains, not just any chains, but ones forged by dwarves from the sound of a cat's footsteps, the roots of a mountain, and other impossibilities. Yet Fenrir grew smarter with each failed binding. When the gods presented him with the slender, silken ribbon Gleipnir, seemingly harmless, he sensed the trick. His demand, a god's hand in his mouth as collateral. Only Tyr, the god of war and oaths, had the courage to comply. When Fenrir realized he'd been trapped, he bit down, severing Tyr's hand without hesitation. The sacrifice was brutal but symbolic. Even honor has its price when facing inevitable chaos. Then came Jormungandr, the serpent so vast he encircled Midgard, biting his own tail. Odin, hoping to delay destiny, hurled him into the sea, but the waters only made him grow. The world's serpent became a living Ouroboros, his coils churning the tides, his venom poisoning the very oceans. His rivalry with Thor was legendary. The thunder god once fished him up using an ox head as bait. only for the fishing line to snap at the last moment. Their final battle at Ragnarök wouldn't end in victory for either just mutual annihilation, Thor's hammer crushing the serpent's skull as Jormungandr's venom drained the god's life. Last was Hel, the half-living, half-corpse daughter, banished to rule over the dishonored dead in her mist-shrouded realm. Her hall, Eldjudnir, wasn't a place of torment like Christian hell. It was a cold, quiet purgatory for those who died of sickness or age. Yet her role in Ragnarök was pivotal. She'd unleash an army of the dead to sail with Loki on the ship Naglfar, made from the fingernails of the deceased. What makes Loki's children so chilling isn't just their destructive power. It's how their stories mirror Norse acceptance of inevitable ends. The gods didn't cower from fate. They faced it, knowing their struggles were woven into the cosmos long before their birth. Tyr's lost hand, Thor's doomed battle, even Odin's knowledge of his own demise, they're reminders that courage isn't about winning. It's about meeting destiny unflinching, even when the threads are already cut. Two-thirds god, one-third man, Gilgamesh of Uruk was a king who terrified even the heavens. Brash and unstoppable, he ruled with an iron fist, exhausting his people with endless battles and merciless demands. The gods, watching from their celestial courts, knew such unchecked power couldn't last, so they crafted a mirror for Gilgamesh's soul. Enter Enkidu, a wild man molded from clay by the goddess Araru, his fists as strong as the king's but his heart untamed by civilization. Their first meeting was a tempest of blows, streets shaking as they wrestled for days, neither yielding. But from that violence bloomed something unexpected: brotherhood. Together, they carved their legend into the cedar forests, slaying the monstrous Humbaba, guardian of the gods' sacred trees. Victory tasted sweet until it turned to ash. Their crime against the divine order couldn't go unpunished. When Ishtar, the tempestuous goddess of love, offered herself to Gilgamesh, he spurned her with insults, listing her past lovers turned to stone or beasts. Enraged, she unleashed the bull of heaven, a creature whose breath cracked the earth open. Though Gilgamesh and Enkidu triumphed again, their defiance sealed Enkidu's fate. Stricken by a wasting sickness, he died cursing the gods, his last breaths a whisper in Gilgamesh's ear. For the first time, the king who feared nothing was gripped by terror, not of battle but of mortality itself. Clutching his friend's lifeless body, he vowed to conquer death, no matter the cost. His journey led him to Utnapishtim, the only mortal granted eternal life. Surviving the Great Flood by building an ark at the god E's command, Utnapishtim now lived beyond the edges of the world. Gilgamesh crossed poisoned rivers and scaled impossible mountains to reach him, only to be given a cruel test: stay awake for 7 days. Exhausted by his quest, he failed instantly, dozing off like any mortal. Utnapishtim's wife took pity, revealing a secret, a plant at the bottom of the sea that restored youth. Gilgamesh dove deep, retrieving the thorny prize, but before he could taste it, a serpent stole the plant, shedding its skin as proof of the gift's power. Defeated, he returned to Uruk, empty-handed but transformed. The walls of his city, once just symbols of his pride, now held new meaning. Though kings die, their deeds endure. The epic doesn't end with immortality, it ends with wisdom. Gilgamesh, who once raged against the night, finally understood the lesson carved into Mesopotamian clay. Life's value isn't in its length, but in the marks we leave on the world. And 4,000 years later, his story still echoes, proving the ancients were right all along. Maui, the trickster demigod of Polynesian lore, wasn't content with the world as it was, especially not with how quickly the sun raced across the sky, leaving his people barely enough time to fish, farm, or cook before darkness fell. Unlike gods who wielded lightning or commanded oceans, Maui's power lay in his cunning and his unbreakable ropes, woven from his sister's hair and blessed with ancestral magic. His plan to lasso the sun itself, the people of Hawaii, weary of toiling under fleeting daylight, begged Maui for help. so he gathered his brothers, promising them an easy fishing trip, a clever ruse to secure their aid. Together, they journeyed to the crater where the sun rose each morning, its fiery tendrils scorching the earth as it launched into the sky. Maui knew brute force wouldn't tame a celestial force. Timing was everything. As the sun's first rays crested the horizon, his brothers hurled ropes woven from flax and incantations, each loop snaring the sun's limbs like vines trapping a wild boar. The sun roared, thrashing against its bonds, but Maui's knots held fast. With a bone club carved from the jaw of his ancestors, he struck the sun's face again and again, not to destroy it but to strike a bargain. "Move slower," he demanded, "or I'll shatter your light forever." Defeated, the sun agreed, its once frantic pace now a languid arc across the heavens. The days stretched long enough for crops to flourish and nets to fill, but Maui's victory wasn't just about convenience. For the Polynesians, the legend explained the rhythm of the seasons and the art of wayfinding. Navigators, reading the sun's slowed path like a map, could voyage across thousands of miles of open ocean. The story even mirrored their worldview. Like Maui's ropes, the threads of family and tradition bound the cosmos together. Yet there's a twist woven into this tale. In some versions, the sun's wounds became the markings on its face, sunspots, reminders of Maui's audacity. In others, the demigod's triumph came at a cost, his own life burned away by the sun's retaliation. Either way, the lesson lingered. The Polynesians didn't see nature as an enemy to conquer, but as a force to negotiate with, its rhythms shaped by ingenuity and respect. Even now, when the sun lingers golden on the horizon, you might hear elders whisper, "That's Maui's handiwork." The dice had scarcely settled before the Pandava's world unraveled. What began as a friendly game of chance in Hastinapor's opulent hall became a trap. Their cousin Duryodhana's masterstroke of malice, tricked into wagering their kingdom, their freedom, even their shared wife Draupadi. The five brothers watched helplessly as their honor was stripped away. The terms of their defeat: 13 years in exile, 12 in the wilderness, 1 in disguise or forfeit everything forever. But this wasn't just banishment, it was a slow burning fuse leading to the greatest war ancient India would ever witness. The forest became their crucible. Where once they ruled from jeweled thrones, they now slept on beds of leaves, their royal hands calloused by foraging and hunting. Yet divinity walked beside them. Krishna, their guide and friend, appeared whenever despair threatened to drown them, once materializing from Draupadi's tear-soaked prayers when she nearly succumbed to thirst, lifting an entire river into her cupped palms. Arjuna, the peerless archer, spent years in the celestial realms training with Indra himself, returning with arrows that could split mountains. Even the sun god Surya gifted Yudhishthira a magical copper vessel that never emptied, ensuring no guest, whether sage or starving beast, left their camp unfed. Their final year posed the cruelest test. To remain undiscovered, they had to vanish into ordinary lives. Yudhishthira became a courtier skilled in dice, Bhima a cook in a king's kitchen, Arjuna a eunuch dance instructor. The disguise wasn't just about survival, it was a reckoning. Stripped of titles, they discovered who they were beneath the crowns. When spies finally sniffed them out in Matsya Kingdom, the brothers' exile officially ended, but peace didn't follow. Duryodhana, refusing to return their lands, forced the Pandavas' hand. The Bhagavad Gita would soon be spoken on Kurukshetra's battlefield, its first verses seeded in these very forests. What makes their exile extraordinary isn't the suffering, it's the transformation. The Pandavas didn't just mark days, they forged alliances with mountain tribes who'd later fight beside them. They learned the language of rivers and stars, lessons that would outmaneuver Duryodhana's armies. Most importantly, they grasped a truth that echoes through the Mahabharata: destiny isn't written in palaces. It's carved in wildernesses where gods and mortals walk together, and every hardship is a step toward Dharma's reckoning. The Arctic winds howled like a chorus of betrayed spirits the day Sedna's father sealed her fate. It began with a promised marriage to a mysterious hunter who lured her to his remote island, only to reveal himself as a twisted bird spirit in disguise. Trapped in a life of misery, Sedna pleaded for her father to rescue her. He sailed through treacherous ice floes to bring her home, but when the bird spirit pursued them in a storm, cowardice overtook him. Gripped by panic, he hurled his own daughter overboard into the bone-chilling waters. As she clung desperately to the boat's edge, his knife came down again and again, severing her fingers until the sea swallowed her whole. But this wasn't the end. Sedna's severed fingers transformed into the first seals, walruses, and whales, her anguish giving birth to the very creatures that would sustain the Inuit people. Dragged to the ocean's depths, she became the fearsome mistress of Adlavan, the underworld where souls go after death. Yet her power wasn't just over the dead, it extended to all marine life. When hunters struggled to find prey, shamans would descend in trances to comb the tangles of Sedna's hair, soothing her anger by untangling the knots left by human misdeeds. Only then would she release the animals back to the hungry world above. What makes Sedna's legend so haunting isn't just the betrayal, it's the delicate balance it reveals. The Inuit understood that survival depended on respect. Overhunting or wastefulness would stir Sedna's rage, causing storms or scarce catches. Her story wasn't just myth, it was an ecological covenant, teaching that the sea's bounty came with responsibility. Even today, elders whisper that when the ice cracks unexpectedly or a seal vanishes from familiar waters, Sedna is reminding humanity that nature's gifts are never guaranteed, they're earned through reverence and restraint. No hero in Greek mythology suffered a crueler twist of fate than Hercules. Born to Zeus and the mortal Alcmene, his very name, Glory of Hera, was a mockery, for the Queen of Gods saw him as proof of her husband's infidelity. Hera's vengeance wasn't swift, it was meticulous. When Hercules was a grown man with a family of his own, she cast a madness upon him so profound that he slaughtered his wife and children with his own hands. The horror of his actions drove him to seek purification, but no ordinary penance would suffice. The Oracle of Delphi decreed he must serve King Eurystheus, his own cousin and Hera's puppet, for 12 years, completing whatever impossible tasks the king devised. These weren't just challenges, they were death sentences disguised as labors, each designed to break Hercules' body and soul. Yet with every trial, the hero transformed his suffering into legend. The first labor set the tone: slay the Nemean lion, a beast whose golden hide repelled all weapons. Hercules soon realized brute force was useless. Cornering the lion in its cave, he strangled it with his bare hands, then used its own claws to skin it, wearing the invincible pelt as armor for the trials ahead. Next came the Lernaean Hydra, a serpent with 9 heads where 2 would grow back for each one severed. Fire and ingenuity became his allies, cauterizing each stump with a torch before his nephew Iolaus could even pass him the next. The labor was so grueling that Eurystheus, fearing Hercules' growing prowess, declared 2 tasks invalid, refusing to count the Hydra since he'd accepted help, and discounting the cleaning of the Orgion stables because Hercules diverted rivers to wash away decades of filth in a day. From there, the labors spanned the known world. The Cyrenian hind, sacred to Artemis, required a year of pursuit without harming it. Hercules captured it mid-leap, cradling the golden antlered deer like a relic. The Erymanthian boar drove him into snowdrift so deep he carried the thrashing beast back on his shoulders, icicles clinging to his beard. For the Stymphalian birds, he shook bronze rattles forged by Hephaestus, startling the man-eating creatures into flight before picking them off with arrows dipped in hydra venom. Each trial was a paradox, divine punishment morphing into a showcase of mortal resilience. The later labors ventured into realms no living man should tread. Capturing the Cretan bull, father of the Minotaur, meant wrestling Poseidon's own spawn into submission. Stealing the mares of Diomedes demanded feeding their barbaric owner to his own flesh-hungry steeds. But the 9th labor crossed into blasphemy, obtaining the girdle of Hippolyta, queen of the Amazons. Hera, ever spiteful, spread rumors that Hercules came to conquer, turning the warrior women against him. Blood spilled where diplomacy might have sufficed, and Hippolyta fell in the chaos, her belt torn away as both trophy and tragedy. His final labors were less battles than descents into nightmare. Fetching the cattle of Jayon meant traversing the Sahara, where he split a mountain to create the Strait of Gibraltar. The apples of Hesperides required tricking Atlas himself into retrieving them while Hercules shouldered the sky. And Cerberus, the three-headed hound of Hades that demanded something beyond strength respect. Descending into the underworld, Hercules appealed to Persephone's mercy, gaining permission to drag the beast to the surface without weapons, relying solely on his grip and grit. What makes these labors timeless isn't their spectacle, but their symbolism. Each beast represented a facet of human struggle, chaos, greed, death, and each victory a lesson in adaptability. Even Hera's wrath, cruel as it was, became the anvil on which Hercules forged his legacy. By the end, the man who began as a broken murderer had become a god, not through birthright, but by proving that even the heaviest burdens shouldered long enough can lift you to Olympus. The first blood spilled in the Norse cosmos wasn't between gods and giants, it was between gods and gods. For ages, the Aesir and Vanir had coexisted as separate pantheons, the Aesir ruling from Asgard's towering halls, while the Vanir wielded dominion over fertility, magic, and the untamed forces of nature. But when the Vanir sent Gullveig, a sorceress of unfathomable power, to Asgard as an emissary, tensions ignited. The Aesir, suspicious of her Seda Magica, a craft they associated with chaos, tortured her, burning her body not once, not twice, but 3 times. Yet each time she emerged from the ashes laughing. Her resilience wasn't just defiance, it was a declaration of war. The conflict that followed reshaped the 9 realms. Unlike the straightforward clashes with giants, this was a war of equals where magic proved as deadly as swords. The Vanir, masters of primal forces, unleashed curses that withered crops and turned rivers to poison. The Aesir, though unmatched in battle prowess, found their fortifications crumbling under enchantments they couldn't comprehend. Even Odin's spear Gungnir, which never missed its mark, seemed useless against illusions that made whole armies vanish into mist. The deadlock dragged on until both sides realized something profound. Neither could annihilate the other without destroying the world they sought to rule. So they chose a radical peace, not through surrender but through exchange. The Vanir sent their brightest Njord, the god of seafaring wealth, and his twin children Freya and Freyja, embodiments of fertility and love. In return, the Aesir offered Honir, a god of indecision, and Mimir, the wisest of their kind. But this wasn't just a hostage swap, it was a fusion of worldviews. The Vanir taught the Aesir the secrets of Seda, weaving magic into the fabric of Asgard's power. Freya's golden boar, Gullinbursti, became a symbol of prosperity, while Freyja's falcon cloak let her soar between realms, bridging divides. Meanwhile, the Vanir gained strategic insight from Mimir's severed head, which Odin preserved with runes and herbs to whisper counsel. The war's end birthed something greater, a pantheon no longer divided. The Aesir-Vanir unity became the bedrock of Norse cosmology, proving that order and wildness weren't opposites, they were partners. When Ragnarök loomed, it wasn't just Thor's hammer or Odin's wisdom that stood against chaos, but Freya's connection to the earth and Freyja's command of fate itself. Even their truce had a lesson etched into its core. Sometimes the strongest alliances aren't forged in victory, but in the humility to recognize that no force, divine or mortal, can thrive alone. Before there were dawns or sunsets, before even the gods had names, the world lay silent beneath an empty sky. The Mayan gods, huddled in the primordial darkness, yearned for beings who could praise them, who could keep the sacred calendars and honor the cycles of time. But creation isn't simple. It took 3 attempts, each more disastrous than the last, before they found the perfect recipe hidden not in divine magic, but in the golden heart of the earth itself. Their first experiment was pure hubris, molding figures from river mud. The gods crafted creatures that could speak, but they crumbled under the first rain, their words dissolving into meaningless babble. These weren't just failures, they were an insult. The mud people couldn't lift their faces to the heavens, couldn't remember the names of their makers. Disgusted, the gods sent a great flood to wash them away, leaving only echoes in the clay pots later shaped by human hands. Undeterred, they tried again, this time with wood. Carving humanoids from trees, they succeeded in making them walk and talk, even build villages. But these wooden beings had no hearts, no reverence. They mimicked life without understanding it, grinding corn without gratitude, coupling without love. The gods, furious at their emptiness, unleashed a fiery rain. Jaguars tore them apart, cooking pots rose up to smash their heads, and the few survivors fled into the forests, destined to become the monkeys that still chatter mindlessly in the branches. Then came the revelation. The gods gathered in council, humbled by their mistakes. To create beings worthy of worship, they needed a material as sacred as their own divinity. They sent the fox, the coyote, and the parrot to the place of abundance, where they split open the mountain of sustenance with lightning. Inside, they found it yellow maize, white maize, the very flesh of the earth. Grinding the kernels into fine dough, mixing it with the waters of life, they shaped the first true humans, 4 men who could see across the cosmos, whose wisdom was so vast it rivaled the gods' own. But perfection, as the gods soon learned, is its own kind of danger. These maize-born humans saw too much past, present, and future unfolding like the petals of a flower. Fearful of such power, the gods blew a mist into their eyes, clouding their vision just enough to leave room for faith. To complete their work, they fashioned 4 women, and from these couples sprang the Mayan people, bound forever to the corn that birthed them. This myth isn't just about origins, it's a mirror. The Mayans didn't merely eat maize, they were maize, their bones filled with its ash, their blood its water. Every planting season reenacted the gods' discovery, every harvest a reminder that humanity's survival hangs by a thread woven from gratitude and sacrifice. And perhaps that's the deepest lesson hidden in the Popol Vuh. To be human is to be both humble and divine, shaped from something far greater than ourselves, yet forever yearning to see beyond the veil the gods left in place. Banished from the heavens for his reckless storms and the torment he inflicted upon his sister Amaterasu, the sun goddess, Susanoo descended to the mortal realm with the weight of disgrace heavy upon his shoulders. His arrival in the land of Izumo was not met with celebration, but with sorrow, for the earth itself seemed to weep. A grieving couple, the elderly Kunitsukami known as Ashinazuchi and Tenazuchi, knelt by the banks of the high river, their faces etched with despair. Their tears were not for Susanoo, but for their 8th and final daughter, Kushinada Haim, soon to be sacrificed to the monstrous Yamata no Orochi, an 8-headed serpent whose appetite for human flesh had already claimed 7 of their children. Each year, the beast emerged from its lair, its crimson eyes burning like embers, its 8 sinuous necks weaving through the trees as it devoured a maiden whole. Susanoo, ever unpredictable, could have turned away, but something in the parents' grief stirred him. Instead of continuing his aimless wandering, he made them an offer: spare Kushinada Haim, and he would slay the Orochi. Skeptical but desperate, they agreed. The plan required more than brute strength. Susanoo knew the beast's hunger was its weakness. He ordered a vat of potent sake brewed 8-fold in strength, and set it within a ring of 8 gates, 1 for each head. When the Orochi came, its head swayed drunkenly, drawn by the scent. Each monstrous muzzle plunged into the vat, gulping the liquor until their movements grew sluggish, their pupils clouded. Seizing his chance, Susanoo drew his sword, Totsuka note, Tsurugi, and attacked. Yet the Orochi was not so easily felled. Its scales resisted blade strokes, and its thrashing threatened to crush him. One by one, he severed the heads, the river running black with serpent's blood. But as he hacked at the 4th head, his blade struck something hard. A gleaming sword lodged deep within the Orochi's flesh. This was Kusanagi, the grass-cutting sword, its edge so sharp it could part the wind itself. With this divine weapon, Susanoo finished his grim work, carving through the remaining heads until the beast lay still. The victory was more than just salvation for Kushanada Heim. Susanoo, the storm god once cast out for his cruelty, had found redemption in an act of protection. He gifted the sword to Amaterasu as a token of reconciliation, and in time, Kusanagi would become one of the 3 sacred treasures of Japan, symbolizing valor. The myth endures not just as a tale of heroism, but as a lesson in transformation, how even the most turbulent forces, when channeled with purpose, can bring balance to the world. Thor's hammer was gone, not misplaced, not simply lost but stolen, vanishing in the dead of night while the god of thunder lay snoring. The realization struck Asgard like lightning. Without Mjolnir, the realm stood defenseless against the giants. Panic rippled through the halls of the gods until Heimdall, ever watchful, spotted the culprit Thrym, king of the Jotnar, who'd buried the hammer 8 miles beneath the earth and demanded a ransom no Aesir could stomach, Freyja, the goddess of love, as his bride. The demand was absurd. Freyja, whose chariot was pulled by cats and whose necklace dripped with the tears of warriors, would sooner reduce Thrym to cinders than wed him. Yet without her cooperation, Mjolnir might remain lost forever. Enter Loki, the mischief maker, with a solution as outrageous as the theft itself. What if, he proposed, eyes gleaming, Thor himself became the bride? The silence that followed was brittle enough to shatter. Thor's roar of protest shook the rafters, but Loki's logic was merciless. Only Freyja's presence would lure Thrym close enough to reclaim the hammer. And so, with gritted teeth and a borrowed bridal gown, the mightiest of the Aesir transformed into the world's most unconvincing goddess. The deception was precarious from the start. Thor's wrists, thick as tree trunks, strained the delicate sleeves of Freyja's dress. His beard, hastily concealed beneath a veil, bristled like a boar's hide. Even his appetite, devouring an entire ox and 8 salmon at the wedding feast, drew stares. Thrym, though smitten with his own cleverness, grew suspicious. "Why do Freyja's eyes burn like forge fires?" he muttered. Loki, ever quick, leaned in with a whisper. "She hasn't slept for 8 nights, so great is her longing for you." The giant, flattered, reached for Mjolnir, placed on the bride's lap as a wedding gift to bless the union. The moment the hammer touched Thor's hands, the illusion shattered. Veil torn away, muscles rippling beneath the ruined gown, he swung Mjolnir in an arc that split the feast table in half. Thrym scarcely had time to blink before the first blow landed, his skull crumpling like wet parchment. The other giants fared no better, their bones reduced to kindling beneath Thor's wrath. By the time the dust settled, the hall was a ruin, the hammer restored, and Asgard's pride mostly intact. What makes this myth unforgettable isn't just the hilarity of Thor in drag, it's the subversion of expectations. The giants, often portrayed as brutes, here outwit the gods, forcing them to stoop to absurdity. Loki, typically the antagonist, becomes the architect of salvation, and Thor, usually a blunt instrument, learns that even thunder must sometimes whisper. The tale endures not just as comedy, but as a reminder. In the Norse world, pride is the first casualty of necessity, and even the mightiest must sometimes swallow theirs to win the day. Zeus's skull split with a force that shook Olympus, not from a blow but from a presence straining to be free. For days, his head had throbbed as if the cosmos itself were hammering against his temples. Then, with an explosion of divine light, Athena burst forth, not as a wailing infant but as a warrior in full battle regalia, her spear gleaming and her shield raised high. This was no ordinary birth, it was a cosmic event, the goddess of wisdom and strategy emerging fully formed from her father's mind, a living embodiment of intellect and tactical brilliance. The circumstances of her arrival set the stage for her entire mythos. Unlike other gods who inherited domains through lineage or conquest, Athena's very essence was carved from thought itself. Her rivalry with Poseidon for patronage of Athens wasn't just a territorial dispute, it was a clash of ideals. Poseidon struck the Acropolis with his trident, unleashing a saltwater spring, a show of raw power. Athena answered with an olive tree, its roots digging deep into the earth, promising sustenance, trade, and peace. The city's leaders chose her gift not because it was flashier, but because it represented foresight, the kind of wisdom that builds civilizations rather than dominating them. Yet Athena was far from a pacifist. Her strategic genius turned the tide in countless battles, from guiding Odysseus through the labyrinth of war to aiding Perseus in slaying Medusa. Even her shield, the Aegis, wasn't merely defensive. It bore the head of the Gorgon, turning enemies to stone with a single glance. Her duality, destroyer and protector, warrior and diplomat, made her uniquely revered. In Sparta, she was worshipped as Athena Promachos, the frontline fighter whose presence loomed over battlefields. In Athens, she was Athena Parthenos, the virgin goddess whose temple housed the city's treasury and sacred relics. What cements her legacy, though, is how she reshaped the very concept of heroism. While Ares reveled in bloodshed, Athena valued victory through cunning. She favored heroes who outthought their foes, from the wooden horse of Troy to Jason's seamless navigation of the clashing rocks. Her lessons weren't just for demigods, they echoed in the courts of mortal kings and the strategies of philosophers. Even her weaving contest with Arachne carried a deeper truth. Pride in craft is noble, but hubris against the divine unravels everything. Athena's birth wasn't just a myth, it was a declaration. Wisdom isn't inherited, it's forged in the crucible of necessity, springing forth when the world needs it most. And perhaps that's why her influence endures, from the olive groves of Greece to the halls of modern institutions that still bear her name. She reminds us that true power lies not in the muscle but in the mind. The ball struck the stone floor of Xibalba with a sound like cracking bone. Hunahpu and Xbalanque, the hero twins of Mayan legend, stood surrounded by the grinning skeletal lords of the underworld, their fate hanging on a game that was anything but sport. This was no ordinary match, it was a battle for survival against deities who thrived on suffering. The twins' father and uncle had ventured into this nightmare realm years before, only to be tricked, sacrificed, and their skulls hung from a calabash tree as trophies. Now history seemed poised to repeat itself until the twins turned the underworld's own cruelty against it. From the moment they descended the treacherous stairs into Xibalba, the twins knew every step was a trap. The lords of decay and darkness welcomed them with false hospitality, offering benches that were actually blistering hot stones and cigars laced with hidden knives. But where their elders had fallen for these deceptions, Hunahpu and Xbalanque outwitted them. When given flaming cigars to smoke, they swapped them for fireflies that glowed convincingly. When challenged to spend the night in the House of Gloom, they painted macaw feathers to mimic dawn's first light, tricking their captors into ending the test prematurely. Each ruse revealed something profound. The underworld's power lay not in strength but in illusion. The ball game was the ultimate test, played with a heavy rubber ball representing the sun's journey across the sky. Victory required more than skill, it demanded an understanding of cosmic balance. The Xibalbans had rigged the court with obsidian blades and poisonous snakes, but the twins countered with strategy. They let themselves lose the first match, allowing the lords to gloat, then revealed their true plan. When ordered to retrieve flowers from a garden of razors, they sent leaf-cutting ants to do the impossible. When forced into the House of Bats, Hunahpu lost his head to a swooping demon, only for Xbalanque to carve a squash into a makeshift replacement, keeping his brother alive until dawn restored him. Their final act was a masterpiece of subterfuge. Captured and ordered to dance on hot coals as punishment, the twins instead leaped into a fire, not in surrender but as sacrifice. Their bones ground to dust and scattered in the river, they returned 5 days later as resurrected fishmen, their newfound shape-shifting abilities allowing them to move undetected. Disguised as wandering performers, they entertained the underworld gods with miracles. Burning huts they restored whole, animals they slaughtered and revived. When the lords demanded, they performed the ultimate trick, sacrificing a person and bringing them back. The twins chose the arrogant Zibelban king. But this time, when the knife fell, the resurrection never came. Their vengeance complete, the twins ascended to the heavens. Hunahpu became the sun, his light banishing the underworld's shadows, while Xbalanque became the moon, his cooler glow a reminder that even in darkness cycles continue. But their legacy wasn't just celestial, it was cultural. The Mayans saw their story as a blueprint, life as a ballgame where death is just a passage, where cleverness outweighs brute force, and where even gods can be outmaneuvered. Today, when the sun sets and rises again, it's not just a celestial event, it's a reminder that the hero twins are still playing, and the game never truly ends. The moment Eurydice's foot met the viper's fang, the world lost two souls at once, hers to the underworld, and Orpheus's to a grief so profound it silenced even the birds. No mortal had ever wept like Orpheus, whose lyre could charm rocks to weep and rivers to stand still. But when his lament reached Olympus, the gods themselves shuddered. Apollo, his father, whispered a reckless hope, "Go to the land where joy is forbidden and play what even Hades cannot resist." The descent to the underworld wasn't marked by a path, but by sound, the fading cries of the living, then the hollow whispers of shades drifting like smoke across the Styx. At the riverbank, Charon, the ferryman who demanded coin from every soul, lowered his oar at the first note of Orpheus's lyre. No gold was needed, the melody was currency enough. Cerberus, the three-headed hound, lay down like a pup, his monstrous throats humming in unison. The fields of asphodel, where aimless souls wandered in eternal twilight, stilled as if dawn had broken. Even the Furies, their serpent hair hissing, paused mid-torture to listen. When Orpheus stood before the obsidian throne of Hades and Persephone, he didn't plead. He played. The song spun images of Eurydice's laughter in sunlight, of her fingers brushing wildflowers, of the way her voice had harmonized with his in life. For the first time in eternity, tears streaked the cheeks of the underworld's queen. Persephone, who knew the cost of being torn from the world above, gripped her husband's arm. Hades, his face carved from shadows, relented, but with a condition as cruel as it was simple. Walk ahead, and do not look back until both of you reach the living world. The ascent was agony. Orpheus, his lyre silent now, listened for Eurydice's footsteps behind him, but the underworld was a realm of echoes. Was that her breath or the sigh of the wind through Tartarus? The weight of doubt grew with every step. Just as the light of the upper world gilded the tunnel's end, his resolve fractured. He turned. There she stood, her fingers outstretched, already half faded, not in anger but in sorrow. Her whisper was the last gift the underworld allowed him. "You loved me too much to trust me." In that instant, she dissolved like mist at sunrise, leaving Orpheus clutching empty air. The tragedy wasn't in his failure, but in its lesson. The gods had tested Orpheus not on his devotion, but on his faith. Music could bend the realms of the dead, but only patience could bridge them. Later, when Maenads tore him apart in their frenzy, his severed head still sang as it floated down the Hebrus River, a proof that some art outlasts even death, but not the human heart's hunger for certainty. The gods knew Fenrir's destiny the moment he was born that one day. His jaws would stretch wide enough to swallow Odin himself during the cataclysmic battle of Ragnarök. Yet when the wolf cub first tumbled into Asgard, small enough to cradle in Loki's arms, even the Allfather hesitated. Could fate be cheated? Their first attempts were gentle, chains to test his strength disguised as games. The wolf snapped them like twigs, first the sturdy lading, then the unyielding Dromi. But with each broken link, Fenrir grew larger, his amber eyes sharper, his suspicions deeper. Then came Gleipnir, a ribbon thin as silk forged from impossibilities, the sound of a cat's footsteps, the breath of a fish, the roots of a mountain. Its unassuming appearance was the gods' greatest trick. When they challenged Fenrir to break this harmless bond, the wolf hesitated. His instincts screamed trap, but his pride roared louder. "Only if one of you places a hand in my mouth as pledge," he demanded. The gods froze, all but Tyr, the god of oaths and justice. Without flinching, he laid his right hand between Fenrir's teeth. The moment Gleipnir tightened, the truth became agony. The ribbon held fast, its magic unbreakable. Fenrir thrashed, howling curses that shook the roots of Yggdrasil, but the gods only laughed. All except Tyr, whose severed hand lay in the wolf's maw, a blood price for their deception. As they anchored Gleipnir to a rock with the sword Tyrfing, Fenrir's rage crystallized into prophecy. "This betrayal will echo in Ragnarök," he snarled. "When my fangs meet Odin's throat and Tyr's other hand falls to Garma's jaws." The myth's brilliance lies in its paradoxes. Tyr, the god of honor, broke his word to uphold a greater good, preserving the cosmos, even temporarily. Gleipnir, forged from abstract concepts, proved stronger than any metal, revealing that some bonds aren't physical but woven from the fabric of reality itself. And Fenrir, he wasn't just a monster, he was a force of nature, his binding a desperate pause button pressed by gods who knew they couldn't stop destiny, only delay it. When Ragnarök arrives, Fenrir's escape will herald the beginning of the end. His gaping maw will devour the sun, his steps will split the earth, and his vengeance will be absolute. Yet even then, his story won't be one of mindless destruction. The wolf is as much a victim as a villain, a creature condemned before his first growl, his fury the inevitable result of gods who chose fear over fairness. In the Norse world, even doom has layers, and Fenrir's tale reminds us that every chain, no matter how cunning, eventually breaks. Eris, the goddess of discord, knew exactly how to stir chaos with a single act of omission. When the wedding of Peleus and Thetis excluded her from the guest list, she didn't rage or storm the gates. She simply rolled a golden apple into the feast, inscribed with two deadly words: "To the fairest." The fruit gleamed like a weapon among the Olympians, its surface reflecting the vanity of three goddesses who instantly laid claim to it: Hera, queen of the gods; Athena, armored in wisdom; and Aphrodite, whose very presence made roses bloom. None would back down, and none would share. Even Zeus, king of Olympus, recoiled from the impossible task of choosing between them. So the responsibility fell to the least likely judge imaginable, Paris, a shepherd prince of Troy, whose sheltered life among idyllic pastures had left him utterly unprepared for the storm of divine temptation about to descend upon him. The three goddesses appeared to him on Mount Ida not as radiant abstractions but as bargaining merchants. Hera, regal and imperious, offered empires command of all Asia, wealth beyond measure. Athena, her grey eyes sharp as spear points, promised victory in every battle, strategic genius unmatched by mortal or god. Aphrodite, draped in nothing but the scent of myrtle and sea foam, whispered of a different prize: Helen of Sparta, the most beautiful woman in the world, bound to fall helplessly in love with him. Paris, young and unhardened by war, hesitated not out of wisdom but desire. The golden apple, forged in pettiness, became a mirror for his soul. His choice was less a judgment than a surrender. When he handed the apple to Aphrodite, he set in motion a chain of events far beyond his understanding. Helen's abduction wasn't just a romantic escapade. It was an act of sacrilege that shattered the sacred bond of Xenia, the ancient Greek code of hospitality. Kings across the Aegean rallied to Menelaus's call, their fleets darkening the horizon as they sailed for Troy. The gods, too, took sides. Athena and Hera, humiliated by Paris's rejection, fueled the Greek armies with divine fury, while Aphrodite shielded her favored mortal with capricious interventions. Even the apple itself carried a bitter irony, its golden sheen masking the rot within, a metaphor for the fleeting allure of beauty when untethered from power or wisdom. For the Trojans, the consequences were apocalyptic. 10 years of siege, the deaths of Hector and Priam, the fall of a civilization, all traced back to a shepherd's split-second decision. But the myth's true lesson isn't about vanity or lust. It's about the unbearable weight of choice when gods and mortals collide. Paris wasn't just picking a goddess. He was choosing between war and peace, duty and desire, the tangible and the ephemeral. And in that moment, humanity itself was judged not for picking wrong, but for believing any choice involving the divine could come without a price. The golden apple wasn't a prize. It was the first spark in a fire that would consume the world. Baldur the Bright was loved by all, not just by the gods of Asgard, but by every stone, every flame, every whisper of wind in the 9 realms. His laughter was sunlight piercing through winter clouds. His mere presence could soothe even Odin's brooding storms. So when he began dreaming of his own death, the gods reacted with a desperation that shook the roots of Yggdrasil itself. Frigg, his mother, raced across creation, extracting oaths from every conceivable threat: iron, fire, beasts, even diseases, swearing they would never harm her son. The effort seemed foolproof. At Gladchime, the gods amused themselves by hurling weapons at Baldur, watching blades shatter and spears splinter against his invincible skin. Their laughter echoed like a shield wall's clatter, a celebration of their triumph over fate. Loki, ever the serpent in the garden, saw not joy but opportunity. Disguised as an old woman, he slipped into Frigg's hall, weaving flattery into careful questions. "Surely you didn't bother with every little thing." He prodded. Frigg, weary from her labors, admitted one oversight: mistletoe, a plant so young and frail she deemed it harmless. The moment the words left her lips, Loki's grin cut sharp as a dagger. He carved a dart from the overlooked sprig, its pale wood unassuming yet lethal in its exemption from the oaths. The scene at Gladchime turned from celebration to carnage in a breath. Blind Hertha, Baldur's brother, stood apart from the merriment until Loki pressed the mistletoe into his hand. "Here," he whispered, guiding Hertha's aim, "join the game." The dart flew true. Baldur's gasp was the first sound, not a scream, but a soft exhalation, as if the world itself had forgotten how to breathe. Then came the silence, thicker than any winter frost, as his body crumpled like a felled oak. What followed was a grief that defied the god's very nature. Odin, who had traded an eye for wisdom, now found no solace in knowledge. Thor's hammer, capable of leveling mountains, could not smash death's grip. Frigg's tears became a currency of desperation as she begged Hermod to ride Sleipnir into Hel's realm, offering any ransom for Baldur's return. Even Hel, mistress of the dishonored dead, seemed moved, but her condition was cruel. Every being in the 9 realms must weep for Baldur's homecoming. And here, Loki's malice crystallized into prophecy. Disguised as the giantess Thirk, he refused to shed a single tear. "Let Hel keep what she holds," he rasped, his voice a serpent's hiss in the dark. Baldur's fate was sealed, and with it the gods' certainty. For the first time, Asgard understood their vulnerability. Baldur's death was no mere tragedy. It was the first thread unraveling in the tapestry of Ragnarök, proof that even the brightest light could be extinguished by the smallest oversight. His funeral pyre, lit aboard his ship Hringhorni, burned not just a body but an illusion that gods were eternal, that order was unbreakable. When the flames subsided, all that remained was the bitter truth: some wounds never heal, and some goodbyes are forever. Fire was never meant for mortal hands, at least not according to Zeus. The king of the gods had decreed that humanity would grope blindly through the cold, gnawing on raw flesh while the Olympians feasted in divine warmth. But Prometheus, the cunning titan who'd fought beside Zeus against his own kin, saw potential in those fragile, shivering creatures. His name meant forethought, and true to its meaning, he envisioned a future where humans could rise beyond their helplessness. So he made a choice that would echo through eternity. He stole a single spark from the chariot of Helios, hiding it in a hollow fennel stalk, and carried it down to earth like a whispered secret. Zeus's fury was as relentless as thunder. This wasn't just about fire, it was about defiance. The gift of flame meant knowledge, technology, the ability to forge weapons and build civilizations. Humans would no longer cower, they would challenge their limits, even the gods themselves. For such insolence, Prometheus was condemned to an eternity of agony, chained to a desolate peak in the Caucasus, where an eagle would tear out his regenerating liver each day, only for the cycle to repeat at dawn. Yet the Titan never begged for mercy. His suffering became a testament to the cost of progress, the price paid for every leap forward in human history. But the myth twists deeper. Prometheus wasn't just a rebellious benefactor, he was a shapeshifter of fate. Long before the theft, he'd already outwitted Zeus during a pivotal sacrifice at Mecone. Dividing a bull into two offerings, he wrapped the bones in glistening fat and hid the nourishing meat beneath unappealing hides. Zeus, lured by appearances, chose the gleaming portion, leaving humans the true sustenance. This act of deception wasn't petty trickery. It cemented the relationship between mortals and gods, framing sacrifice as theater rather than substance. Fire, then, was merely the next step in Prometheus's quiet war against divine tyranny. Centuries later, Heracles would free Prometheus, but the Titan's legacy had already seared itself into mythology. His story is more than a cautionary tale. It's a celebration of the restless human spirit. Every spark struck from flint, every furnace blazing in the night carries his defiance. And perhaps that's why Zeus feared fire most of all, not for its warmth, but for the unquenchable hunger it ignites in those who dare to question the order of things. The skies above Lanka blazed with the fury of 1,000 suns as Rama's arrows sliced through the night, each one honed by 14 years of exile, loss, and unwavering devotion to Dharma. Below him stretched Ravana's flying city, a marvel of golden spires and sorcery, floating defiantly above the earth, its very existence a testament to the demon king's stolen power. For 10 heads and 20 arms, Ravana had ruled unchecked, kidnapping Sita, defying the gods and bending the laws of nature to his will. But now the weight of his hubris crashed down upon him. Rama, the exiled prince turned divine warrior, stood at the gates of Lanka not for conquest but for justice, and behind him surged an army unlike any the world had seen. Hanuman, the monkey god whose leap across the ocean had first exposed Lanka's weakness, tore through Ravana's defenses with the force of a hurricane. Vanara warriors, their bodies fueled by devotion, scaled the city's walls with tree trunks and boulders, turning the jungle itself into weapons. The battle was chaos incarnate. Demons shape-shifted into storms, arrows ignited midair, and the earth trembled as celestial weapons clashed. Yet amid the carnage, Rama's focus never wavered. His bow, given to him by the sage Agastya, was more than a tool, it was an extension of his purpose. Every shot carried the weight of a promise to restore balance, to prove that righteousness could not be chained by brute force. Ravana, for all his might, failed to grasp the depth of his error. His brother Vibhishana had warned him return Sita, make peace, but the demon king's pride was a cage no logic could penetrate. Even when Rama severed his heads one by one, each grew back, a grotesque metaphor for Ravana's refusal to yield. The turning point came not from Rama's strength but from his wisdom. Guided by Vibhishana, he aimed for Ravana's hidden weakness, a nectar of immortality stored in his navel. The final arrow, tipped with divine fire, found its mark, and the once mighty king fell like a mountain shattered by lightning. Lanka's descent from the skies was more than a physical collapse, it was the unraveling of an illusion. The city's golden facade crumbled to reveal the rot beneath, the consequence of a reign built on theft and arrogance. Sita's ordeal, tested by fire to prove her purity, was a searing reminder that Dharma demanded sacrifice but never cruelty. And Rama's return to Ayodhya, crowned not just as king but as the embodiment of cosmic order, cemented the Ramayana's deepest lesson. Victory without virtue is hollow, and true power lies not in floating cities, but in the unwavering choice to do what is right, even when the cost is unbearable. The epic's resonance stretches far beyond its final battle. For millennia, the Ramayana has been recited not as a tale of gods and monsters, but as a mirror. Ravana's Lanka lives on in every empire that mistakes might for legitimacy, while Rama's struggle echoes in every soul fighting to hold fast to principle in a world that rewards compromise. A flying city may have fallen, but its story soars a warning and a beacon written in arrows and fire across the sky. From the stormy halls of Asgard to the sun-baked temples of Mesoamerica, these 30 legends reveal something extraordinary, not just about the gods, but about us. Every culture, no matter how distant in time or space, has looked at the chaos of existence and spun it into stories, trying to make sense of the universe through the deeds of divine beings. The Greeks saw their own flaws reflected in the petty squabbles of Olympus, while the Aztecs understood creation as a cycle of sacrifice and renewal. The Norse embraced their doom with defiant laughter, and the Polynesians tamed the sun with cunning instead of force. These aren't just tales, they're mirrors held up to humanity's deepest fears, brightest hopes, and most unanswerable questions. What's astonishing isn't the differences, it's the echoes. A serpent coils through nearly every pantheon, whether as the chaos dragon Apep in Egypt, the world-encircling Jormungandr of the Norse, or the feathered Quetzalcoatl who gifted maize to mortals. Tricksters like Loki and Anansi remind us that rules are made to be bent, while tragic figures like Orpheus and Sedna teach that even gods understand grief. And always, there's the battle against entropy, whether it's Ra fighting nightly to bring back the dawn or the Rainbow Serpent carving order from primordial mud. These repeating motifs aren't coincidence, they're proof that storytelling is coded into our DNA as vital as breath. So now we turn to you. Which of these legends resonated most? Was it the raw defiance of Prometheus, chained but unbroken? The heartbreaking devotion of Isis, piecing her love back together shred by shred? Or maybe Maui's audacity, laughing as he lassoed the sun itself? The pantheons are vast, and we've only scratched the surface. Tell us in the comments which myths or deities you'd love to explore next. The Yoruba Orisha, the Slavic spirits of forest and storm, the epic battles of the Hindu Puranas. Every like, share, and subscription helps us dive deeper into these timeless tales, so hit that bell to join us on the next leg of this mythic journey. After all, the gods are still speaking. Are you listening?